Hey, I'm too cool for school. You've watched these videos, right? Ever wondered, how were they made? Well, you've come to the right place. First, let me give a little background on myself. I'm an animator. I've never actually finished Chapter 2 of Deltarune. I probably hold a world record in Pizza Tower, and I create projects with my friend Tim, whom I've known for about a decade now. He's the voice actor, concept artist, and music producer for the Spamton videos. He'll also be appearing at the end of the video. So, how did this thing all start? Well, you can thank Tim for that. As Joey Drew once said,
"That's how I got started. Just a pencil and a dream."
Without him, these videos wouldn't have even been made in the first place. He sketches and draws a lot for fun or for other projects he's working on, but he was always showing me the funny little drawings he was doing with Spamton, and I quite liked them. Eventually, he threw out the idea of making a proper shop animation. I was immediately on board with it, and so, we began to work on the first video. Both of us were stepping super far outside of our comfort zones. Tim was making reference material for a 3D model, something I believe he's never done before, and I would be using reference material. I've made a model previously, so Spamton right here is like my second one, which is why he doesn't look so good with the textures and optimization. After Tim finished some of the reference material, like the front and side view, I started. I had absolutely no clue what I was doing or how to model in general, but I tried. After a while, I spat out the first ever development screenshot from my end. It was this: Spamton's empty, bald head. Anyway, you can start to see him take shape here. I gave him some temporary glasses, and already I encounter the first problem of many. Hair. Hair. It's a normal thing. A lot of people have it, including weird, glitchy puppet things. People have replicated his hair, so how hard could it be? Well, really hard. Let me remind you, this was my second model, so take this with a grain of salt, but for the life of me, I couldn't do it. It was like, it's not hair, but it is, you know what I mean? Like, if I were to search up how to make hair in Blender, YouTube just gives me these. No, I don't want to give him actual hair. I want to give him like a chunk of mesh in a complex shape that looks like hair, I think. So after hours of watching videos, I find out the term stylized. Okay, so I gained some confidence and I searched up how to make stylized hair in Blender. And no, that didn't help. All the videos here teach you how to make hair with strands. Spamton over here doesn't have any luscious locks unlike these thumbnails, so I was at square one again. So after hours of sifting through speed models, useless tutorials, and other stuff, I stumbled upon this video right here. I saw the hair was something similar I was aiming for, so I skipped to the part where this guy was making the hair, and there was just 1 second that caught my attention. I'm gonna play it for you now and see if you can get it. Didn't catch it? I don't blame you. All I saw was the hair went from this, to this, to this, in like 3 seconds. So I went frame by frame, and there was my answer. Remesh. Basically, it's the process of blocking out whatever object you want, and then combining all those blocked objects into one smoother object. So, after I found that out, I didn't make the hair, and I just saved it for last. After nearly a week of modeling, he was finally... Oh, no, wait, sorry. That comes later. Here's some more progress shots, outlining the body. Here's the hand. Here's why I gave Spamton his little sweater. He looks ready for the holiday season. Pants, shoes. Then I went back and finally made a suit. And now I moved on to the eyes. These ones are a bit more interesting. So, if I'm being completely honest, if you ask me how to recreate the eyes right now, I couldn't tell you. It involved like generating a black dot on a 2D texture and rigging its location using these things called bone drivers. Sounds really boring, I know. Then I gave him some textures, which brings us to, I guess, our first piece of cut content. Tim threw out the idea of Spamton having black gums, which was based off this drawing right here. I liked the idea, I gave it a try, but at the time, I didn't know how to properly texture, so it kind of just looked like this. If I were to ever remake the model now, I could probably do that. Then I finally made the hair. I don't want to talk about it. I gave him a rig and he was done. Now that the model was done, it was time to make Spamton's humble abode. Nothing too eventful happened here. Tim really wanted to keep the whole, garbage house look, but also wanted to put some Easter eggs, extras, or just references in the back. Here's actually a scrap version of how the phone used to ring, which is a bit different from the final product. Then, out of nowhere, Tim sent over the fully voiced script, as well as his banger. After everything was in place, it was just a matter of time until I made it. Once again, nothing too eventful, but I just animated the project, put it into an editing software, and sent it off to YouTube. Now at this point, I felt pretty proud of myself. I made my first somewhat original animation of what might have been my highest quality at the time. Tim and I didn't really expect it to get any spike in popularity. We just kind of made the project out of pure passion, not caring if it blew up or not. But over time, the video was getting a ton of comments. They were all filled with nothing but kind and motivating words. Seriously, these are some of the best comments I've read on the platform. They were all just so detail-oriented and really nice. I'd be lying if I said they weren't part of the motivation to make the other two Spamton videos. So seriously, thank you guys so much. Which, speaking of, let's move on to the next one in the series. The alleyway animation. This one just kinda happened, although it took a really long time to do. The reason for that is because I had a very busy grade 12 semester. Anyway, I was once again stepping really far outside of my comfort zone. I would begin to learn how to make proper environments. Tim and I both had a lot of input on what the alley was going to look like. Mainly he suggested that thing. I honestly don't know what that is. I used to, but I forgot. But as soon as he said, the thingy locked behind the fence with a bunch of pipes and stuff, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I don't know, it just kind of fit. I'm pretty happy with its addition. Of course, we wanted to keep it true to what the alleyway looked like in the game, which is, this. So we had a lot of room for creativity here. I also had to make the Chris model, which just kind of manifested. I didn't use any references from Tim, and I just looked up pictures of Chris Deltarune and tried copying it. He's definitely not my best model ever, but he's okay for a side character in the animations. It works. I would work on it for about 15 days straight before leaving the project alone for a month. Then, one day in January, I animated the first scene, which is actually another piece of scrap content. It's very minor, but Chris was originally going to walk past the dumpster before getting startled by the lid opening. I didn't like this very much, so I decided to scrap it. The project would be left alone for quite a long time again, but then, Tim sent me a ton of references for the Neo video? Okay, hold on, wait. I'll get to that in a sec. His early Neo references gave me some motivation to start animating again. After all, my semester ended like a week prior, so I had time to animate now. And so I did. Throughout the whole month of February and early March, I just had this huge spike of motivation and finished the project. By the way, here's a screenshot where I showed Tim how I cheated the camera on the scene, which he promptly drew Spamton a few minutes later doing the exact same pose. The final thing for the alleyway animation was actually another piece of scrap content, where Tim threw out the idea of Spamton's textures glitching every time he laughed or bugged out. I decided to give it a shot, but it didn't really turn out well at all, so once again, it was scrapped. Eventually I just sent it off to YouTube and that was that. Nothing else too notable happened, and it's time to move on to the one you've all probably been waiting for. That's right, it's the Neo video. This one took so long to make. Seriously, Tim and I poured our absolute heart and souls into it. I spent somewhere between 600 to 800 hours on this project from start to finish. Possibly more, I'm just guessing. So like I said, Tim sent me a bunch of references before the alleyway animation was even finished, and I'll show those to you in a second, but I want to show an even earlier drawing of Spamton Neo. This drawing right here dates back to July 15th, 2023, which is exactly when I was working on the shop animation. Here's the first piece of content I made for Neo, starting with his head. Now you may be like, why on earth does he have a giant hole in his head? Well, that's a very good question. Let's take a look at the amazing concept art to answer that. So, originally, he was gonna have segmented teeth, like an actual person would, but I thought it looked a bit funky, so I just stuck with his regular puppet teeth. You can also see his jaw was gonna open a lot differently, kinda like a hinge. Of course, you can see the massive gaping hole in his head in the references too. Here's this really awesome chest piece that originally looked very spiky and cool, and I loved this design, but I noticed it would probably get in the way of animation a lot if Spamton were to ever move his arms forward. So, unfortunately we had to change it to something else. Here are the arms and legs, which were originally supposed to have like the stringy vine things wrapped around them, which I'll admit I just forgot to include. There were no actual full drawings of Neo besides this very early one. Everything from there was just segmented into each limb having its own details. However, then I get to the process of modeling him. So there were either two routes I could go with here. I could make him an actual body and then cover it with armor, which is what I was originally doing as you can see here, or I make his body the armor, giving a more, robotic approach. I asked Tim in this and, well, we both agree that he should be made of the armor rather than wearing it. You can see I took a while to change my mind here as I already made the arms and legs, but his chest just didn't look right. So after talking to Tim, I started changing it. Tim also sent me a wonderful reference of the new chest piece. This one looks nearly identical to the one he has now, minus the sharp shoulder things. Here's some images of the hands. You can start to see him take shape in this one. Now we move on to the, I guess you can call them shoes? So Tim sent me this reference for the foot. But as you can see, one side has a screw and the other has a bolt. I was a bit confused on this, so I questioned him about it, and Tim now refers to this as the scolt, a cross between a screw and a bolt. I didn't add this because it's technically impossible, but the scolt will forever live on in our memories. I gave him a chest cavity and I was like, okay, I think I'm done. But I was missing something. The wings, of course! How did I forget them? So I just added them. They weren't too hard to make. So then I was like, okay, I'm done. But I was missing something. That's right, people. I struggled more on this head of hair than I did the previous one. Warning, these screenshots are bad. I started blocking out the hair and, doing the whole remesh thing like from earlier, and no, that didn't do anything. So then I just did it again, and no, that's not it either. The back was somewhat fine, but the front looked strange. So then I tried it again, and no, still nothing. So then, believe it or not, I tried again. I was actually pretty happy with this version, and it was my best one yet, but I decided to focus on something else and come back to it later. Now you may have noticed, where did the giant hole in Spamton's face go? Well, I removed it. It took this long in development before I decided to remove it. The reason? It was just a bit too distracting and made his glasses look a bit goofy. I know some people may have liked it, myself included, but it just didn't look right on him. After that, Tim sent me an absolutely amazing sketch of the little heart inside Spamton's chest. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of concept art, and if it wasn't for this drawing right here, I wouldn't have even added the heart in the first place. I made the heart, gave him strings, and boom, textures. I added some eye variations and finally gave him a rig. Ooh, and the cannon too. I did a quick little pose test with him and all was looking good. Tim even sent over a clip of him voicing Neo. I would then make a very small and bad animation test that I'll play for you now.
My number one valued customer, don't you know that a chopstick cannot defeat God?
Now you may be thinking, hey, that sounds familiar. Well, it does, because that second half of the voice clip is actually in the official video. While I'm here, here's an oddity from it. He originally says, you three have signed the waiver.
You three have signed the waiver, and there's no backing out now!
But Chris has no friends, so I bleeped it out with a glitch. At the time, we weren't really sure how the video should have gone. so Tim was just sending me voice clips he wanted to do. He sent me the main script in its entirety, but the ending was basically just stitched together using old voice clips. I know Neo has like 30 seconds of unused dialogue, but this is all I could find.
But enough talk! Let's move on to the main event! The moment you've all been waiting for!
Now that Neo was done, let's talk about the basement. The basement absolutely destroyed my computer. So listen. I had absolutely no idea of what I was doing or if it was even safe for my computer, but I did it anyway. I simply just looked up how to make a rock wall thingy in Blender and just followed some tutorials. Now, I'm quite certain that these are all meant for very small amounts in your project, as they're pretty bulky chunks of mesh. However, if it looked good to me, I was just gonna mass produce it. Was this a good idea? No. Did it look good? In my opinion, not really. But I didn't know what else to do. I mean, look at the actual basement in Deltarune. What is this? What is the basement made out of? I tried looking at some fan art and got varying results. Even Tim was at a loss, and the only concept art he could muster was this. And this shortly after. Eventually, I kind of just experimented with some stuff and finished all the rock portions. Then I used this really cool Blender tool that actually allowed me to draw the vines wherever I wanted using geometry nodes. I noticed that, coincidentally, the more vines I added, for some, unexplained reason, the slower my project would be. So, for basically all of the project, I had completely disabled them until it was ready to render. Wait, did I say render? After completing the animation, which took almost 3 months for the blocking and final product, it was time to render. I knew this was going to be a long process. It was a longer video, had a lot of bulky mesh in the scene, and had a ton of vines. I clicked the render button, and I prayed. After a few frames were rendered, I found out the average time it took, punched it into a calculator, and as much as a bummer as it was to find out it would take 2 weeks to render, I was fully ready for that and found some other ways to occupy myself. But something still didn't sit right with me. 2 weeks is absurd. Surely there's gotta be another way. Give me a break here, I'm rendering on 50 samples with like a 3090 GPU. That's criminal. After a few days went by, one night when I was about to go to bed, something hit me. The walls. They required a massive stack of modifiers that I didn't apply. So I instantly got up from my bed and canceled the render. Maybe that's why the wall was doing this. I spent like 15 minutes applying each modifier to anything made of rock. I then hit render again and it was looking promising. I put it into a render calculator and what was originally 16 days of rendering turned into just a measly 4 days of rendering. This was big news too. It meant I didn't have to rush to get it out on the release date I wanted it to. I had loads of time to edit the video now. Even after I fully finished the video in post-production, it was just kinda sitting there for a few days and waiting for the release date. So I felt motivated to do that extra bit, and I added some more things, fixed some stuff up, and just made it to my satisfaction. Finally, I sent it off to YouTube. After like 8 months of planning, brainstorming, drawing, sketching, modeling, texturing, rigging, animating, rendering, editing, it was finally done. The video I've wanted to make for a year was finally done. It was everything I wanted it to be. Even if it may not be the best looking video out there, I'm still happy with it, and I think that's all that matters. The video you're watching right now has also been a year in the making. I've wanted to make this behind the scenes video ever since Tim sent me the first sketch of Spamton. I was just so eager to give everyone an insider look in a somewhat engaging way. I know this video is long, but for those who made it all the way, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. As promised in a community post I put out earlier, I said I was going to do a Q&A at the end of this video. So, let's answer some of your questions. The first question we got is actually a 3-for-1 deal. The first one asks, how many problems you had to animate this very glitchy puppet? Well, strangely enough, none. Animating him was actually very easy, and it was the part I looked forward to the most.
Is it difficult to burn the— Ah! It burns! Somebody help me! Guy? Surprisingly not. I've been voicing for around 4 years, and, well, I started off by screaming. My vocal cords have just adapted to stuff like that now.
And the final one asks, how did you get the idea to make Spamton creepy in the Neo part? Well, Tim was the one who proposed the idea of making the 3 Spamton videos have a darker and more creepy theme. We both wanted Spamton to show that he really was a villain. Topped with his mental insanity, it fit perfect within the Neo video.
What filters and effect did I use to make Spamton's voice? Surprisingly, I made it all in GarageBand, and it's just a simple mixture of bullhorn and bit crushing. I made the bracketed text by cutting off myself mid-sentence, recording another line, and adding some more effects to it, and then splicing that in between the other lines. Pretty simple.
Can you go into how you use drivers for the 2D animated elements of Spamton's eyes? Well, going into depth would have to be a video of its own, but basically, like I mentioned very early in the video, it has something to do with like generating a black dot on a texture and then configuring that dot's location and scale using a driver. That's about the simplest way I can explain it, sorry. Would things be different for you and Tim if the Spamton animations were never made? That's a very good question, and the answer to that would be no. If the Spamton animations were never made, we probably just would have made something of the same quality together. I've known Tim for a decade now, and I'm absolutely confident that we'd be working on some other project in a different universe. Would you ever release your models of Spamton for public use? As much as I don't mind releasing stuff to the public, I'd at least want them to be of high quality. If I made a better, more optimized version of each model, then I'd release them, but for now, these models unfortunately won't be for public use. This next question follows the same topic. These two ask about inspiration, and while I don't really think I had inspiration, the YouTuber Hobo Hobo's Neo animation gave me hope that it was at least possible to do. Also, just old FNAF SFMs inspired me to animate in the first place. How long did it take you to learn how to animate in Blender? Did you take a class or were you self-taught? I am self-taught. It was an absolute 1 in a billion miracle chance that I picked up Blender and learned it. My tip, whatever you do, please do not watch the donut tutorial. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't watch it, please. Do whatever you want to do, don't watch the donut tutorial, please. Anyways, where do you plan to go from here? Well, I just plan to continue making animations and projects. Tim has an absolute infinite number of ideas just waiting to be made, so you never know what's coming next. And finally, for the one you've most likely been waiting for, everyone gather around, for everyone wondering, am I gonna make more Spamton encounters or videos? And the answer is, I'd like to. That's definitely something I'm interested in doing. However, I might be a little busy for about 1.5 years because I'm going into an animation program soon. I would definitely like to make more Spamton videos, but they may not happen for a while. Who knows? And with that concludes the video. This video has gone through like 2 script rewrites, each being about 5,000 words long, which is why this video took so long to make. Originally, it was going to be 30 minutes of me just rambling about how I got here and my story and my background, but that was so boring, I just managed to finally shave it down. I'd like to give a big thanks to Tim for helping me out with my videos, including this one, and for you guys for watching them. I couldn't have done it without you guys, seriously. So thank you so much, and if you made it this far, also thank you. That means the world to me.